The next bead that I want to make is a little lentil with a flower on top. I'm going to put a picture of that on the web video link page. So I'm going to start out with the same ink blue rod that I used to pull a stringer. Oh, before I start, I wanted to show you the tool that I'm using to crease the petals. Here, let's see. Can you see this? It's a dental tool that is curved. You can also use a razor blade, or you can use the sharp tip of the magic wand, or a knife, something, whatever. But I like the curved dental tool, which is actually a trick or a tool that I was introduced to of its usage by Karen Sieber, who makes wonderful florals. Okay, so I'm going to wind on a little bit of glass here for the lentil. And I have my lentil masher in front of me, which is a very unusual position for me. I don't even know whether I can do it because usually it's to the left, but the left is taken up. So I hold it down into the mold to measure how wide I want to be. And with these flower lentils, it's actually not that important to get the right size or the right amount, because the flower will be covering most of the lentil. So actually making a flower lentil is a great way of disguising a badly pressed lentil. So instead of throwing it away, you just put a flower on top. So this is kind of a slightly football shaped bead that I made, and I actually use my lentil mold to shape the bead before I press it. You can either use it down there on the table, or you can take the top part of the mold and hold it like this and heat up the bead and roll it in the mold, and that way it shapes it perfectly. Okay, so I heat this up, just want a nice dark orange, light red glow, and put it in the mold, press it, and see, it's not a perfectly shaped lentil. I don't know whether you can see that. It's a little kind of short on the edges, but for a flower bead, it's perfect. So you can either put the flowers on both sides, or you can put a flower just on one side. For bracelets, I like to have the flower only on one side, and for I'm going to get this out of your way. For necklaces, I like it better when the flowers are on both sides. So now I want to place 5 dots, and I have periwinkle here. This is a pre-pulled stringer, so I'm going to place 1 dot right where the mandrel is, and 5 dots is fairly easy to place. You just if you mess it up once or twice, then you know whether you tend to be too close. And there's absolutely no rule, but one of the things that I discovered with making flower lentils, it's actually better if you don't flame polish the bead after you've pressed it, because you have the concentric circles, and they are wonderful guidelines for you to where to put the dots. And one of the things also that is nice is, even let's say you have placed a dot kind of off the side, at this point when you flatten it, you can actually move it over a little bit. So you just heat it up and kind of shove it over there. So you just want to flatten this first layer of dot. Now I take the ink blue stringer that I pulled, the fat stringer, and place 1 dot on top. And somebody asked me to make a video on dot placement, so you can watch it right here. So I heat the tip of the stringer, I touch it to the bead, I bring it back in the flame, burn it off. Rotate the stringer, heat it, touch it to the bead, melt off. Rotate, touch, melt off. Rotate, touch, and melt off. And you see this all happens mostly outside of the flame. So how you go from here is you can experiment a little bit. I like to flatten these dots a little bit before I crease them, just because it's easier to crease them if they're not perfectly round. When you heat each of these dots, give a little bit heat to the back. When you heat each dot before you crease, it actually rounds up again anyway. So So I try to heat one dot at a time. And that is just, if that seems difficult to you, it's a matter of getting to know your flame. You can see that just one dot is glowing. So I have to put it in front of myself here. So I crease and push it a little bit to the center. And just experiment with the way of how you move this tool, whether you push outwards. And this tool it's pointed to the tip, like pointed towards the tip, but it gets bigger back there, and that makes the flower petal to go outwards. So it's really cool tool to use with this. And with the pointed tip, if you push inwards a little bit, you get a natural petal shape. So one petal at a time. Push towards the center. Don't forget the back, because even a small bead like this can still crack if you neglect the back. Okay. Alright. So here, let's see whether the camera can focus on it. No, it doesn't really. Well, you see the picture on my website. Now for the stamen, I take a very fine encased stringer that I made before out of the same purple over periwinkle. And you can do all kinds of stamen here. You can even use like a little starburst marini as your stamen, but just heat the center gently. You don't want to heat too much for the stamen, because then you will lose the detail on the petals. So I just make lots of tiny little dots in the center here, and that just looks like a natural cluster of stamen. This color might have been a little bit too dark, so I see in my reservoir. I should have used encased periwinkle instead of. So maybe I'll just add some just regular periwinkle stringer dots kind of randomly in there, just give it a little bit more light. Also, if there's not enough contrast between your petals and the base bead, you can add a little bit of detail to the edges. For example, I take this periwinkle stringer and set a really tiny dot at the very tip of each petal. Ooh, my hands are shaking today. Okay, this way you give a little bit more contrast. Make sure that they're all nice melted in. And so for the back of the bead, you can do anything, of course, but somebody wanted to see. Toby, shut up! Somebody wanted to see a spiral, so I'm going to make a stringer spiral on the back of this bead, and I'm not sure that it's going to show up here. Whenever you apply stringer, you want to make sure that the base bead is warm, because if that bead isn't warm, the stringer is not going to stick, and the flatter the surface is, the harder it is to make stringer decoration. A round bead, so I'm not sure that should show it up. A round bead is a lot easier to decorate than a lentil after it has been pulled. So just give a little bit of, as Jim Smirsich would say, insurance heat to the tip, and that's it for today.